Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Oh, Tom, we just zoomed in on Tom. Whoa!
Yeah, sorry, I was just zooming a little bit. I was like, nah, that's too much of the room.
It was
What's
like
cool is if I move this way, the camera follows. This is great on an audio medium. Anyway,
that's crazy.
Sorry, I didn't mean
you guys
for that
have set this up as like you've got the NVIDIA broadcast, you've got the whiz-bing cameras. George has got an expensive microphone.
Whiz-bing.
Whiz-bing.
Yeah, I love it. George has an expensive microphone. Tom's got a Turtle Beach, like just a little
4-year-old PlayStation headset.
For 7 years.
Mine's a PS3 headset. Okay, mine's been around since 2013, which is probably why I sound like shit.
Well, no wonder I can occasionally hear myself through your headset coming into your microphone because your headset is as old as the Obama administration. No wonder.
Yep.
Here's me.
While that headset's existed.
Here's me trying to get the latest and greatest to make the podcast sound good. And Adam's like, what if we just hot-wired a fucking iPhone microphone from 2003 and I'll get some hot glue and just attach it to my face. And I reckon that'll sound pretty good.
What if I just got a lapel mic and just shoved it down my throat until it sounded like this?
Oh yeah, like one of those TikTokers who just holds the microphone up to their face. Yeah.
Oh no, you mean the iPhone one? Yeah, that's all weird. Anyway,
okay, just
completely derailed.
I know we're talking about lav mics there for a second. Did you know they're actually called lavalier mics, not lavalier mics?
I didn't even know they were called lavalier.
Well, you've heard of lav mics. Lav mic's the one you clip onto the shirt, like you're a broadcaster. Lapel mic. Mic.
I've heard it as a lapel mic. I've heard no other name.
All right. Well, I guess this was breaking news to me and me alone.
Yeah, I guess. Adam, had you heard that before?
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea.
Great.
Well, okay. I asked the guy with the 2013 PS3 headset, have you heard of a lapel mic? Anyway,
that mic I have not heard of. Whatever you just talked about. But
great. Off to a good start.
Apparently they're the same thing. That is what I'm learning today. And we're all learning things this week. Or not learning, if you asked the leader of the opposition.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, good segue. Do you know there's this thing called the Voice of Parliament that apparently is the biggest thing?
There's this thing that they're wanting to do called the Voice of Parliament. It's not even a thing yet.
It's the worst thing in the world, Tom. It's gonna change Australia.
Yeah. There's somehow simultaneously at the same time no detail on the thing, and the detail that we know means that it's the worst thing in the world. You're the voice. Try not to understand it.
Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, it does not. Yeah, there is no detail, but we somehow have enough detail to know that it's bad. But we want more detail to know whether it's bad or not. But we already know it's bad with the little detail we have, which is not enough, but enough to know that it's bad. That's the loop that old egg boy Dutton over here has been peddling for the past week.
Yeah,
so basically. Context-wise, so Labor, if you didn't know, Labor, as part of one of their election promises, basically have said that they're going to implement the recommendations from a couple of reports that came out, the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and there was another report as well. And they're going to have two things. One is Indigenous recognition in the Constitution, and secondly, enshrine a voice to Parliament in the Constitution, which require a recommendum. Referendum.
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 I've been
I recommend him.
Damn it! I couldn't even do the joke. I couldn't even wrap my mouth around it to do a joke. I was going to say I've been referenduming for decades now.
Oh, we're so stupid. We're in our 30s, and I just imagine 18-year-old me, starting up this podcast, looking at 30-something-year-old us and going, "What a bunch of idiots." What a bunch of losers.
Losers still doing a podcast.
Doing wordplay in their 30s. You pieces of shit.
Why are you getting paid for it?
I thought we'd be millionaires by now.
No, we're doing it. There's a referendum. And then, so the concept is, that was, mandated by the election because the opposition, now the government won. and away we go. Now, the opposition, formerly the government, the Liberal Party and National Party, have been fumbling around this issue for the better part of 6 months. The Nationals came out spectacularly and were like, fuck you, everyone, we're not going to vote yes, randomly, a couple of months ago, which was actually breaking from the Liberals who, at that point, their policy was...
We're open to it in principle, sort of thing.
Yeah. And since then, they've been looking for a lightning rod because the opposition are just void of policies at the moment. They can't think of anything. They're like, they're stupider than me, put it that way.
And that's saying something.
That's pretty stupid. Yeah,
it's very stupid. And so I guess the one thing they feel like they can get traction on is one thing that shouldn't be divisive. And so
one would think.
Well, I guess it's something that, because as you said in your description earlier, Adam, of that, what the referendum isn't to implement a particular policy or body of people or whatever. Like, there isn't this is specifically what a voice to parliament will achieve and how it will influence X, Y, and Z in the process. It is literally yes or no, should we amend the constitution to enshrine that there would be a voice to parliament for the Indigenous peoples of the country?
It's just a question. Do you think Indigenous people should have a voice in our government? And the Nationals hit the fuck no button.
Yeah,
fuck
that's
no.
it. Because when they're talking about all the detail, like, that's the big point that they've got, right? Like, they have no policies, as you say, Adam. They've got no policies. So instead, they're like, let's play the game of we don't know what this is, and what we don't know is spooky.
Yeah.
And
classic conservative playbook as well, by the way.
We don't know what it is, but it's terrible.
A voice to our pets to parliament? Like, it'll be the same-sex marriage debate all over again.
It's a classic. It really does follow a playbook. It's like, step one, we don't have enough detail. Step two, why are they dripping out the detail? Why is it so slow? Step three, the detail we have isn't promising. I don't know. So I've got to see the full text before I can really get on board with this. Step four, no. There's all these problematic things about it. Step five, I don't know if we should really support this thing. I mean, looking at some of the detail, it's just really not. It's just like they know that to come out against it off the bat would make them seem like the horrendous racists they are. And so they need to create the justification for why they're horrendous racists. Like, you never wanted this, and you were just trying to find an excuse, and any excuse will do. And even if the excuse is there isn't enough detail, there isn't enough detail is always the go-to excuse when you don't support something that you know you should support, but you don't want to support because you're a bigot piece of shit. Like, we need the detail.
That's exactly what Peter Dutton has been flogging now for the last, I think, about 2 months. And it's like, at first I was like, well, okay, like, whatever, like, he's got to have stuff to say at press conferences. But once they realized it started getting traction, they're like, oh, great, we'll follow this. And combined with this, not only is the opposition, this is their new thing of there's not enough detail, we've got to get the detail. Sky News, the Australian, the Herald Sun, and all of the other Murdoch outlets,
and the Guardian, weirdly.
No,
not the Guardian,
have jumped on this bandwagon and are flogging it. Front page of all their bloody.
Like there's maybe a connection between
some common ownership between all of those different media outlets. I can't think what that would be.
The editorial team and the big wigs might just have a bit of a stake in a few things there. Just, I don't know. I'm spitballing.
Something Murdoch,
Matt Murdoch, the Daredevil.
Matlock. You're thinking of
Matlock, the detective.
Yeah, it's Matlock. Yeah.
And so this has all been developing, I guess, for the last 2 months, to the point where this week Albanese and his team have had to, like, well, not just this week, the last probably 2 or 3 weeks, they've had to, like, come out on the front foot now and start actually engaging with this crap. We're still 6 months away from the referendum, by the way.
Good, great.
So we're still 6 months away from it.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
And they've had to start actively defending it. So to the point where this week, Albanese gets on 2GB, I think it was.
Dutton's favourite radio station.
It's the only way he can come.
talking to Ray Hadley.
Yeah.
He's got a really look. Ray. I mean, say what you want about Ray. Ray's got a great voice.
Ray, it's great to be on again because I haven't nutted in 3 months.
Jesus Christ!
I really need a release.
It's an image I just do not need.
Just Peter Dutton, completely full suit up to from the neck down to the waist, and then just completely naked from the waist down, going, "Oh, Ray, so good to hear your voice."
I think what you just described there, George, is actually a war crime. So I think I'd recommend that you stop now.
I've been charged under the Geneva Convention. I just got a text message.
Section 3, Article number 493. So anyway, Albanese's on the radio show, and so Ben Fordham, embodying the fever pitch of fear because there's not enough information over the last 2 months, basically has starts asking questions like, well, you got to give us the detail. And then Albanese's like, have you read the reports that this whole thing has based on? He's like, oh, no, well, I haven't. I shouldn't have to read the reports.
I'm a journalist. I don't have to read things. I just hear things and then I say things.
Anyway, and then to the point where he's like, well, are they going to get paid, these people? Are they going to have, actual powers? And, Albanese's like, well, no, probably not. It hasn't been decided yet. Very vague on the details. But this vagueness that Albanese was putting out was kind of playing into Fordham's hands.
Exactly what they wanted.
Yeah. And to the point where, he got so flustered, Albanese was then asked, I think, have you sought advice from the Solicitor General about this? And he said, I think, no at that point. But in fact, they had, actually. So next day, Mark Dreyfus has to come out. They had to scrub that section from the transcript from 2GB's website. And then Mark Dreyfus had to come out and go, actually, there's been a correction to the interview the Prime Minister gave yesterday. We did seek advice from the Solicitor General. To which Peter Dutton then was like, see, they're trying to deceive you. It's just like, for fuck's sake.
It really is.
We're 6 months out. Just calm the fuck down.
I really don't understand how it is different in quality to the black people are coming. The black people are coming. They're going to take over the government. You white Australia. It's not even dog whistling. It's a dog bullhorn at this stage. It's they're just straight up saying they're the government's going to be taken over by a bunch of indigenous jackbooted thugs. It's they're coming for your guns. That's the kind of rhetoric that's coming out now. It's this is, what we're talking about is a constitutional voice to parliament that has no power, that has no ability to pass any legislation. All they can do is make recommendations and, give their perspective on what's happening. And they're like, tyranny! The tyranny has arrived!
Yeah, it definitely, the thing that they are not saying but saying really is well, what kind of power will they have? And you're like, what? And what kind of power are you afraid they'll have? You go first.
Yeah, I want to hear what you're thinking.
That they'll have. Yeah, because you're right. It does sound like they're just trying to, how can we walk right up to the line of saying,
without using the N-word,
no, this is the beginning of white genocide.
Right,
effectively. Right. Why don't we just put that sentence out there? But they're no, we can't go that far. So let's just take an inch off and just start saying this, which is just
has anyone heard from those Somali gangs? Just while we're on the topic.
Oh, yeah. Have you guys had a nice dinner in Melbourne recently?
Just everyone's getting carjacked again. I don't know why I would bring that up out of the blue, but there you go. It's so funny that the guy who won't tell us why he left the Queensland Police Force is all of a sudden concerned about lack of detail.
Right? Or just
lots of other things we could use some detail about.
Have no, we won't let doctors or anything travel to any of our offshore torture camps. Because you'll get details.
Because details.
Yeah, because details. The other thing Dutton loves details.
The other thing that Dutton's asked for is, I guess this was the next step of give us details. The next step was we'd like to see a draft bill introduced to Parliament. We'd like to see the bill. Thank you very much.
Referendum isn't about a bill.
Well, here's the thing.
Yes,
here's the thing. So as long as they would introduce the referendum, but then the government would have to pass something in Parliament enacting what the referendum.
But from a strategic perspective,
that's where you get to see your draft bill.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense to put qualifiers on the referendum because that's a sure way for a referendum to fail. Is if you propose something beyond a concept to the Australian populace. So this is famously this happened with the the referendum to overturn the monarchy. Because people go, well, we don't know exactly what republic which would look like. And then we descend into arguments about what type of republics are better. And we don't want to turn into the American system. And this all sounds too hard. Actually, the referendum fails. Yeah. It's like, well, this is why you don't put the meat on the bones yet, is because strategically, if you do that, if you give people a Hillary Clinton style 57-point plan, they're either A, not going to read it, B, just like zone out and watch paint dry on the wall, or C, find particular things they don't like in that and then attack it and then use that against you before it even goes to a vote. So this is what you do. You say, this is what we're thinking. Do we have in principle support for this? Yes. Great. Then let's draft the legislation to work out the details of exactly what that's going to look like when the legislation passes Parliament. This is a very standard process as to how to go about doing these things.
Yeah, the other thing, I guess, that an expert, I think it's Antwumi, it might have been, in this article that I'm reading, but this isn't in the rundown. But basically the point being is when they introduce it to Parliament, it will be subject to amendment. So, they might have to go.
It goes through the normal democratic process. Yeah.
Actually, we're going to throw a line in here. We're going to change the wording here. So the point being is if you introduce something which is subject to change at a referendum, it defeats the point. So you have to kind of be very broad. Now, that being said, Dreyfus and the Indigenous Affairs Minister have said, look, we will give you more detail. It's 6 months away, you fucking idiots. We'll get there. We've been in government for about 6 months or something now. It's a process, right? Trust the process.
It was May, right? Yeah. It was May last
year.
Yeah,
9 months or something.
Yeah.
But, I suspect there will be campaigns. You'll see ads on your Facebook. There will be information which will explain what it is. To sit here 6 months away and be like, oh, well, it's obviously a bad idea. No, we can't do it. We can't possibly support it.
It is interesting also that I think part of the strategy from the LNP side is because, as you say, there is a vacuum. When government is functioning well and appropriately, we shouldn't be talking about it every day, right? The front pages shouldn't be covered in Scott Morrison pretends he's various ministers, or Scott Morrison refuses to come home, or Scott Morrison badly plays the ukulele on Channel 9, Channel 9 interview.
I'd forgotten about that.
When you don't have a constant fire hose of crises, government should just kind of be on hold in the background, doing its job, quietly achieving things for the Australian people. You shouldn't have to focus on politics so much every day. And I think that's something that's been glorious about the Labor's return to power, is that you feel like you've got competent adults in charge to a certain degree. They may not always get everything right. They frequently don't. But at least you feel as though there's competent people looking at the legislation, trying to do good things for the Australian people, even if they are trying to walk a line. Right? We don't want to spend too much money and endanger inflation. So we've got to be careful about what we spend and how. And yes, they are trying to do good things, but they're hampered by the circumstances. And you feel as though there are adults in charge. And because things have gone quiet, I think Dutton and co. Have seized the opportunity to take control of the news cycle and gone, okay, well, what can we argue about? What culture war, the Americans have got their gas stoves, which is what they're arguing about at the moment, or Dr. Zeus, or whatever culture war bullshit they're trying to, stir up. Okay, well, since there's a vacuum because Labor hasn't got both hands on the steering wheel controlling every second of the news cycle with a media team that's larger than the legislation team, let's jump in and control it for them. And this is something they can do some culture war arguing bullshit about. When I don't know. I wonder if you asked all of these LNP members individually, alone in a dark, smoke-filled room, whether they actually supported an Indigenous voice to Parliament, they'd be like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Yeah, that's fine.
Odds are, based on the literature which is available, which apparently is over 260 pages long, according to Anthony Albanese, which he said multiple times at multiple press conferences this week. That was the other thing. His response to it has
detail, and I'm assuming that's why he's saying it, right?
Yeah,
that's a lot of pages. Lots of pages mean lots of detail, right?
Yeah.
You ever read Lord of the Rings? That shit.
The problem is, though, is he's sort of getting slightly frustrated with it, and he's kind of deflecting. Yeah, I don't know. It sort of plays into their hands a little bit, I think. But basically, the broad brushstrokes are that it'll be a body, elected by the Indigenous community, and it will have advisory advisor. I can't say that word properly. Advisory powers, adversarial. I can't. Anyway,
no, adversarial powers would be like
powers.
You know, it's like, we meet again, Indigenous voice to Parliament for the last time.
It'll be an advisory body, and the likelihood is that they probably won't be paid. It'll be like a volunteer.
It's so position. Crazy how many advisory bodies there are to Parliament, but this one is contentious because why? Because race. Like, what else could it be?
Paying big coal dollars to them, I guess.
No. It's all right if Woodside comes in and advises us about our coal and gas policy, extraction policy. That's totally fine. We're seeking industry experts. We want to talk to the Council of Business. We want to talk to, we just really want to hear what the businessmen...
Policy Institute or something like that.
All of these different policy think tanks and institutes that conduct similar kinds of advisory services to the government, that's fine. But if it's one that actually represents people, whoa. Slow down, Lois.
Not go nuts.
That's not my Batman glass.
And this is probably out of all of, Labor didn't have any real controversial policies, I think, which is why they won the election. But, this is probably the least controversial,
you would think,
policy in their platform.
When you actually look at what they're trying to do, if you look at it through the lens of, maybe they're going to take away all our rights and round us up kind of scaremongering that they're saying but not saying, it's incredibly controversial. It's one of those amongst, us in our bubble, it's not that controversial at all. But when you're really fed that news cycle of this is what kind of spooky control is this going to have? Then it is a very controversial sort of thing, but it really shouldn't be.
I remember hearing Albanese, either it was Albanese or someone talking about Albanese saying basically the strategy for this was to sort of, let it open to the Australian public, the idea of this advisory body, and the Australian people are mature enough to be able to have the discussion and, come to the right conclusion on their own sort of thing. And I think part of me was thinking at the time when I heard that, I was like, are we though?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Are they?
To be clear, I don't know. I haven't seen any polling on this. It's just the Murdoch media and the Liberal Party, and by extension now, Channel 9 and The Age are getting involved. Sydney Morning Herald, they're all getting involved as well.
There's a term, I know you hate it when I bring up Noam Chomsky, but this is literally the definition of manufactured consent, is when you get a bunch of media outlets all saying the same thing, and then that makes people think, there really is another side to this. Maybe I should look into it more. And it's like, no, there really is no other side. It is a majority issue that Australians think there should be an Indigenous voice to Parliament. But all of a sudden they're hearing both sides it's like with climate change. All of a sudden there's two sides, and I don't know, there must be something to the other side because I'm hearing a lot about the other side, so there must be something to it. And it's like, actually, that's all completely manufactured. The vast, vast majority of Australians believe in gay marriage. The vast, vast majority of Australians believe in an Indigenous voice to Parliament. The vast, vast, vast majority of Australians believe in access for, a safe access to abortion care. These are not controversial issues. But if you looked at the news media as your touchstone for what the Australian public thinks, especially if you're looking at the Murdoch media, you would get a very different impression as to what the public perception of all of these issues
are. The Russians are going, yes, good.
Well, Adam, in answer to your question, this is from late December, but the Australian Financial Review had some polling they were reporting on.
How'd that go?
Which was a 50% yes support, 26% no, 23% undecided.
Yeah, right. So...
and that was a month ago.
70+% of people either want it or don't really care, and it's a small minority of people that actively don't want it. So I think that pretty much says, where the country is at.
Yeah. I do find their polling a little interesting, though, because there's another stat that they have here, which is a breakdown of awareness of the referendum itself. Split by age group and gender binary, which, awkward. Okay. Maybe don't do that. But that in the age group, I thought was interesting that the 55 plus had an 84% yes, I was aware of the referendum rating compared to a 16% no, but that 18 to 34 was a 40-60 split to I was not aware in favor.
18 to 35 is really, we really got to pick up our socks because there's so many.
I was more thinking fuck off that people 18 to 35 aren't aware of this. They would have been a lot of the kind of people being like, this is something we need. I don't know.
I think the people that are,
people,
you got to remember that we are not representative of people in our age group, right? So we are very politically interested. We follow the news, and that is not most people. There's something that John Favreau from Pod Save America talks about. If you are one of the people that watches cable news, whether it's MSNBC on the left or Fox News on the right, you are not most people. Most people are not that engaged with the day-to-day of politics. And it's only when, especially with new tools like TikTok and, social media, Twitter, Facebook, all the sort of stuff, Instagram, we really need to be, and it's part of why we do this, right, is to talk about the news in a way that people in the 18 to 35 space understand it and can hear it and want to consume it in a way that's digestible. So they have
digestible, but that's not.
Let's put a pin in that.
You know what I'm saying?
I know
this is what we do as part of an effort to have news consumers that are on our side of the aisle as active and as informed about issues as people on the right side, the conservative side of the media landscape. I think that's a big part of what I hope to do with the show is create a left-leaning, sensible, but also funny, engaging podcast for the people who are around our age. They don't typically care about politics, but politics very much affects them. Very much affects all of us and how they live our lives and whether you can afford to buy a house and whether, we buy a bunch of submarines that we don't need and whether we give a bunch of tax breaks to the corporate, welfare state. This all affects the amount of money that you have in your pocket and how likely you are to succeed. But a lot of people our age are just not that engaged. The people who are engaged.
TikTok though, with those 30-second cat videos.
Sorry, say again.
I mean, they are pretty great. My fiance sent me a video this morning of a cat that was asleep while touching its toes and purring, and I was like, "This is nice."
You need to use when you got cat videos. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe if Peter Dutton got more of those, it'd be a much nicer time.
We can use those tools to build. I don't want to say it's the opposite of the conservative right wing ecosystem, but it's the other side of it. We can use that popular media to bring attention and light to these issues in the same way that every over 65 person is watching Sky News and screaming at it. We should have our
picturing purring cat video just suddenly smash cuts to someone being like, there's a referendum on an Indigenous voice to Parliament and this is why you should care.
Yeah, but that's you're joking. But I actually think if you do that in a interesting, compelling way, that number of people, which you said 46% of our age group are aware of
40-60 split.
So 40%. That's actually pretty shameful from our perspective. We really should be using those tools to get those people engaged more, because once they are engaged, you don't stop being engaged. So if you can
said with all polling, and this is from was it the Financial Review?
Well, this is the Financial Review.
Fin Review's not Murdoch.
The article, but I'm not sure who conducted the
I guess the point
strategy conducted the poll.
So this is the thing with polling. If it's a phone call poll, and I can see on my phone that I'm getting calls from random, I'm not picking that up.
Yeah, the millennial nightmare, right?
Yeah.
We don't answer unknown numbers. We don't answer the door when people ring the doorbell.
So is that poll even representative of that age bracket from the entry level? I choose to answer.
Yeah, so 100% of the people in that age bracket who are insane enough to answer an unknown number. Yeah, only 40% of them have heard of it.
Anyway. So they'll pick up an unknown number, but they won't read a newspaper or an article. But go figure.
It depends on the sample size. There's a lot of engineering they do behind the scenes with these polling agencies to try and get representative data and sort of even out the skewness of the results and things like that. It's complex statistical work, but it's largely reliant on sample size, right? How many people can you get from each one of these groups, and can you then make a statistical inference based on that amount of information? And things are always changing. Things are in flux. Polling is very, 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 very difficult. at the best of
I
times.
get involved with it. I think it's really interesting, like how they do
it's a lot of
that in this day and
spreadsheets.
age.
So if you love Excel,
100%.
get into it.
I love a good Excel formula. Let's do it. Speaking of Excel, for people who love Excel formulas, I'm sure Qantas and Alan Joyce have looked at a few Excel spreadsheets in their time.
Certainly in relation to their bonus schemes.
Indeed. And Qantas has been in the news, National Airline of Australia, recently because after being, I think, nominated one of the safest airlines of the world quite recently, they've had, I think they're up to 4 or 5 mechanical issues in the last week.
So this week, a plane had to. I think it was on its way from. I want to get the details right. It was on its way from somewhere to somewhere, and
from Sydney to Fiji.
This is one that had to return. So this is the most recent one. So
Sydney was the big one where the engine blew up.
Yeah, an engine of a 2-engine jet. One of the engines blew up mid-flight and was inactive. But they ended up making it to their destination. Okay, where was it? Sydney.
Auckland to Sydney.
Yeah, that's the one. So it ended up making it just fine. But it's like, could you imagine being on a flight and one of the engines blows up? It's literally fire and smoke coming out of it, completely inactive. Like,
yep, that'd be pretty terrifying. And that's the one time you do not want the wing seat. The leg room is not worth it.
I hate to break it to you, Tom, but if the plane goes down, it doesn't matter which seat you're sitting in.
No, but no, it's the thing of that the flight continued and they got there. It's like, we're going to continue the flight, people. And you're like, if I look out the window to my left, there's a blazing inferno. Okay, cool. Everyone else, like, the smoke or the people up the front might get the regular sort of view. If you're in first class, of course, you can't see the burning engine near the plebs. But, if you're there at the wing seat, you can just go like, all right, it's how long to Auckland? A couple hours, and just stare into the fire, hearing "Hello, darkness, my old friend," just creeping into the back of your
I was
brain.
imagining more like like that little gif of the dog where it's like everything's fine. You're just like looking out.
Oh, like sipping the coffee.
Sipping the coffee. Everything is fine. Yeah. And you just, how's the broken engine looking? You just open the window. It's like, shh.
Oh.
It's good. It's all good. Everything's great out there. Don't worry about it.
I mean, us talking about TikToks and things before, like, what an opportunity. You're not going to get that opportunity again. A selfie with a blazing inferno out a plane window behind you.
I mean, you might be your last selfie.
Being like, hey, bro, can you just, like, look outside for me? Like, is it daytime?
Guys, I'm really sorry to say that there was no blazing inferno. It was sort of like some parts fell off the engine, but it wasn't on fire. They turned it off.
Why you got to let the truth get in the way of a good bit?
I have to tell you the truth. It's
fine. Why are you going to do that?
I'd like 3 more
to the listeners.
I'd like 3 more bits lined up. What are you doing?
Okay.
Yeah, geez, I don't have any good bits falling off material. Like, what's wrong with you?
There was a hole in the side of the engine, but it was visible more from the outside.
Oh, there's a hole in the engine. I got tons of stuff on holes. Anyway.
There's a hole in the engine. Dear Liza.
Much like Labor's budget.
So that didn't go down well. And then there was one.
It went down fine. They landed. They got there.
Yeah, they got down.
Could you imagine the stress if you're in the emergency exit row being like, bro, I just wanted some extra leg room. I am not actually cut out to deal with an emergency situation.
The one time you don't want the emergency exit wing row is when there's an emergency, because it's now like, oh no, you mean I have to lift that door that I said I could definitely lift? But,
I was only half looking when she did it. I'm not confident on my ability to
those doors are
execute
heavy, man. It's
that
20
command.
Kilos? Like, I'm a scrawny dude, so like, I mean, I probably could in the high stress situation, but like, I'm a scrawny asshole. I can't bench 20 kilos probably.
It's more when the 90-year-old grandma is asked, "Are you able and willing?" and she's got dementia and just put her in the seat.
I love doors.
She might be able to.
I can bench press 120 kilos.
Yeah, she might have. I don't know. Fixed cars in the war or something.
I'm jacked as fuck, you piece of shit.
Yeah.
So that was the first incident. The second one was a Qantas flight from Sydney to Fiji, which got turned around because of a potential mechanical issue. Apparently, the pilot's got a fault indicator about a potential mechanical issue, and they then circled around outside off the coast of Sydney for a few hours and then came back in.
Right. So they didn't do what the rest of us do when we're driving along.
When our check engine light comes on.
Engine light comes
Just ignore
on.
it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, put a bit of black electrical tape over it and be like, yep, gone. Like, yeah, no, that'll sort itself out. Yeah. No, they didn't do that.
They didn't do that. They did follow proper procedure and they landed the plane. And then yesterday, there were 2 more incidents.
Great.
Shit. Okay.
So there's 4 flights that have been 4 flights in 3 days.
I don't like those odds.
1516 from Melbourne to Canberra was turned around as a precaution due to an issue with the flaps. The flaps weren't working about an hour and a half into the flight.
Gotta check your flaps. You gotta check your plane
I
flaps.
hate it when my flaps aren't working.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's funny. I don't know.
Flaps is just a weird word.
It's a weird word.
It's a funny word.
That sounds funny.
And
also,
then,
I need to lose some weight, so...
there's another flight.
I have flaps, fat flaps is what I'm saying.
I was going to say, did you just bring that up apropos of nothing? I was just like, George, we weren't talking about it.
I'm just generally ashamed of my body at all times. It's healthy.
Great.
Shut up.
What? You do?
Shut up. Tell me more.
I think you're a handsome man.
Your house as well. Let him go. Let him just enjoy his life.
Yeah, you're just like...
I've been lifting.
Just W's all over the place.
Boxes, mainly, but...
yeah. No, you've actually achieved something with your exercise.
Yep.
Just picking up heavy shit and putting it back down where you found it. Stupid.
Seems pointless, doesn't it? Yeah. You're right.
Outcomes. And then there was another flight that had been turned back after the pilots received an indication of a minor engine issue shortly after takeoff. And that was... Didn't actually say what flight that was. That was just a flight yesterday.
But do you think now, like, given all this, like, how many did you say? 4 times in 3 days, probably all this really bad press, that the pilots are now going to be like, engine comes on to be like minor engine issue possible. And they're like, how minor though? Because seriously, if we have another one of these, can we make it? Like, seriously?
It's a bad look.
I wonder whether or not it's more like, it's the other way around. It's like, oh fuck, there's a potential issue with the plane. We have to land it right now.
I think.
They'd be erring
hope that on the side of caution. I would think.
I fucking hope that that's the attitude. To be like, uh-oh.
I also do wonder how often this actually happens without any mention of it in the media. Do you know what I mean? Like, is this actually
it probably happens a lot. I mean, it's statistically probably very likely. Like, I don't know what the stats are on, the odds of mechanical failure in XYZ models of planes, but like the amount of flights that would be happening per day around the world, or even if you isolate it to Qantas specifically, like, surely yes, but I guess it's that they happened this close together.
It's also
during like a period where we're all like, flights are fucked right now, like they've been cooked for years.
And in the midst of Qantas doing a bunch of wholesale outsourcing of all their operations to various providers, for which they've
are they outsourcing plane engines? Because I mean, they kind of have to be in the plane. You can't can't just outsource the engine to a call center overseas.
They buy them from Boeing, obviously, or whomever. But yeah,
it was a joke, George. The maintenance. The idea you can't have remote engines. Like, the engine has to be in the plane. You can't just like.
If you stop doing your bit, I can give you an answer to the question.
Okay. Well, but I felt the bit did not get the recognition it deserved.
I swear to Christ.
This is my written complaint. My formal written complaint to
Can you just
management.
Get the information
out? A 3 out of 5 for the bit, Tom.
3 out of 5 for the bit. I'll take it. Right. That's maybe a distinction by
room for improvement
by uni measurement standards.
It's not. It's a credit. So
that's a distinction, not a high distinction.
No, 70.
I'm guessing
I was just in the university system. 70% plus is a distinction. So anything less than 70
3.5 is like fucking. I'd say 70.
Would be 70. It's not.
Yeah,
you said 65%. Anyway, the point is.
No, 3.5 stars.
Oh Christ.
I said 3.5. I said 3 out of 5, but sure, let's go.
3 out of 5 is 60%.
Roll back the tape. He said 3.5.
I said. Anyway, the point is.
Roll back the tape. No, I'm going to sit here till you do it.
The maintenance crews. That's not how it works. The maintenance crews can be outsourced, right? So you can have people that are Qantas people working for Qantas, and this is what Qantas has been doing. Certainly with their baggage crews. I don't know the extent to which it's happened with their engineering and maintenance crews. Is that you set up a subsidiary and then basically recontract your existing employees out to that subsidiary. So it's like, hey, we've got this new subsidiary called not Qantas. and you're going to go work for that company now, and that company has a bunch of different standards about how we do things. No overtime pay, less standards, whatever. Or they just hire an external company to go and subcontract and do this work for them. That's how it's happened with the baggage handlers and some pilots as well, saying like, if you want access to these new routes, if you want to make money, you got to sign on under the subsidiary, which has a bunch of different standards and isn't covered by your union contract or whatever. So you're getting paid a lot less. So I don't know for a fact that that's happening on the maintenance side of things, but it seems to be happening wholesale throughout the rest of the business. So I'd be surprised if there wasn't some outsourcing happening in the maintenance section as well in order to cut costs, because they've been very adamant about that's the strategy for Qantas right now is run fewer flights, crank up the prices, cut corners, and try and turn a profit.
I'm not cutting corners necessarily.
Well, find efficiencies, right?
For reference,
find a bunch of efficiencies.
Efficiency dividends.
So part of the problem is that they're obviously trying to scale up, but a lot of these planes have been sitting in the desert for however long, and to recommission them back up to working order it's not an easy thing to do, as it turns out. So yeah, I mean, I don't know whether some of these issues are just like because the root cause being I've been sitting in a desert not being used for 2 years, or whether it is
the fact that a once great company has been hollowed out over the last 30 years. I think it's probably the latter.
Yeah, I guess they sort of also have this situation of like, Jetstar stuff hasn't been great either, sort of in recent memory, not from like mechanical faults to my knowledge, but just like some logistical issues. Like, did you hear about that plane that couldn't go to Bali? I think in the last couple of weeks, it might have been late December, where they just upgraded the plane type. Like they changed to a bigger plane so as they weren't overselling the flight, but then they did not tell Bali that. And they were like, the runway that could handle this plane is not open. So after like 8 hours of flying to Bali, they had to then just turn around and come back to Melbourne.
Oh my God.
Oh no, 8 hours actually might have got you there anyway. But it was an 8-hour round trip or whatever. Like they're maybe 4 hours in. And then they get back to Melbourne. And it's like, oh, cool. So, wow, you're exactly where you left after 8 hours of flying because someone didn't coordinate with someone else.
Didn't tick a box. Yeah.
Really dropping the ball.
But you did get to watch Knives Out, the first movie, and also
like
Mission Impossible.
Times.
Yeah, 6 times. Yeah, so you got to see some sweet films on a little tiny screen.
On a little tiny screen with the constant backing track of a plane.
Yeah.
And also the baby that's crying behind you. And won't
definitely
shut up.
how all the Marvel movies were intended to be watched on a 6-inch screen, 3 feet from your head.
Like, I've only traveled overseas like the once in my life because I'm a sheltered piece of shit. But like the one time I did, I was like 11. And yeah, the idea of like, we can watch movies on the flight, that's fun. But most of them were like way too adult in the complexity sense rather than like graphic violence or whatever.
Sexy.
But was just like, oh, none of these sound interesting to me. So I saw the same movie, I think like 6 times. And if I remember correctly, I think it was Space Cowboys. Remember that movie with like Clint Eastwood and Donald Sutherland where a bunch of really old dudes have to do a space flight again? I barely remember it, but I know I've seen it like 6 times. So
how could you have watched it 6 times and not know minute to minute everything that happens in that film?
I was 11.
A likely story.
Anyway, that's just a little insight into who I am. But yeah, there you go. That's what Qantas has been up to or not been up to, which is
that's
a good
all
time.
good because good news is that Alan Joyce still gets his bonus, so that's good.
Nice. I was worried about that. Yeah, I think he's earned it.
So
through superior management.
The share price was going up, I think, until recently. So
why? What happened?
Well,
yeah. Why did something go wrong?
That was a thought. Actually, let's have a look at it. Qantas.
No. Okay.
Share.
Yeah.
Price.
Oh, this is fun. Let's look up share prices.
We'll just go 6 months. No, it is. It's actually a high, 6-month high.
Great.
Oh, cool. Well, sweet.
There you go.
I don't know. Is it the next troll stonk?
It's up 42% over the last.
Well,
6
that's because
months.
people are traveling again, right? Like
one
it's got to be pandemic related.
One stonk.
10.4% for the year. Anyway, cool story. Invest in Qantas.
No, that's not financial advice. Please do not invest. in anything that Adam would tell you to invest in.
I don't know what I'm doing. I can't segue between that and the next thing. Someone else help me out here.
Are we doing the kite story or no?
No, please no.
Jacinda. And
speaking of taking to the skies, Jacinda Ardern has yeeted out of her job as New Zealand Prime Minister and will be replaced by human thumb Chris Hipkins.
The education minister, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know who he reminds me of? You know the comedian
Luke
Luke McGregor?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Luke McGregor's great.
Yeah, he's got obviously blonde hair instead of red hair, but that's the vibe I get. It's just kind of like sort of bumblefuck guy who doesn't really, he's kind of anxious in, uncomfortable situations.
Really uncomfortable all the time. Yeah. No, I love Luke McGregor. Luke McGregor's great. If any listeners haven't watched his 6-part series exploring sex called Lukewarm Sex, it is brilliant, and I would highly recommend.
Very good.
It's fantastic. It's just him being really uncomfortable in a lot of different situations, learning how to be a better sexual person, and it's great.
I would love for Luke McGregor to find some confidence, given that he's now a professional comedian and by all accounts seems to be doing quite well for himself, but I think that might impact his professional success.
Yes, I think the professional success is the outward lack of confidence, and it is really working for him, and he's great. I love him very much.
Man, I wish I could be as insecure as that guy.
I mean, this is just complete, sidebar, but does that mean he has to just keep up this sort of awkward sort of personally, professionally,
just in this is his method. When you see him go, he's actually that uncomfortable in real life as well,
and really he just wants to go and if he's not serious about sex, maybe he just wants to go and fuck in Bali or something. I don't know. I don't know.
So I think we're bordering on defamation here, but
no, but I'm just saying, it'd be weird. I would find that. Trying to keep that sort of...
Yeah, maybe he's just a real cool dude. He's just like a real James Dean type character.
That's what I mean.
He's got cigarettes rolled up in his sleeve like Snake from The Simpsons. He's just punching darts out the back with his mates, just a real cool cat.
That's why you should see his Lukeonomics post things on, I think it's on the Weekly that they do, the Lukeonomics stuff. And yeah, he also has his side character of Cool Government Luke, who's him with confidence, and he's great. Anyway,
there you go.
Well, there you go.
Anyway, talking about Luke McGregor. But I was a bit shocked, just checking my phone and seeing the news alert of Jacinda Ardern has resigned. I was like, huh?
You and everyone else, apparently.
Was there a scandal I wasn't aware of? But no, she's just said, I don't have it in me to go up for re-election. And it's a bit wild, I guess, to look at, because their election, I think, is not due until October. So it was sort of a thing of while she's I won't go up for re-election, she's also resigning her position in a couple of weeks. I think Feb 7th or something is the effective changeover date. Feb
7th. It could be earlier than that, but yeah.
So,
right. That's the date that I saw. It might have changed since they've found the new guy or whatever. Final day in the PM's chair, according to this article from yesterday, is February 7. But I don't know, maybe now that they've picked the replacement, if that'll happen sooner, who knows? But
so you're telling me if I quit my job as a sales rep, I need to give 4 weeks notice. But if you're head of the country, you can get out in 2 and a bit weeks. That's pretty good.
I guess. Well, if you're in the socialist commie utopia of New Zealand, George, yes, if you ask the right people.
They really do everything better. So,
they really do.
It was, she said she didn't have enough in the tank for another run. But given all she's sort of managed in New Zealand over the last 6 years, I think that's probably fair enough. Between the pandemic, the Christchurch shooting, the, volcano explosion,
it's been in constant crisis management.
Just constant, it's constant crisis for the last 6 years. I'd say I'd probably have had enough as well.
Yeah, which is interesting. It's amazing, unlike our leaders, because when our leaders are in constant crisis mode, it's because they keep fucking up.
When she was elected, and this is her big thing, is that she, pitched a lot of sweeping policies prior to the pandemic about, reducing child poverty and all this kind of stuff. And effectively none of them, or not I don't know exactly each particular policy, but not a lot of those policies were implemented.
Well, I got a little bit sidetracked with let me check my notes here. COVID.
Yeah, something happened in 2020. It was real weird. Yeah. They referenced it in that Knives Out sequel, actually, Adam, and I thought that was a bit strange. I was like, they noticed too. They noticed too that something went a bit weird in 2020. Like,
Yeah, they gave everyone a weird throat vaccine right before they got on the island. I was like, okay, all right, sure.
Yeah, that was cool.
So, yeah, I think George pointed this out a couple of days ago, but like internally, Labor are behind the polls now.
Yeah, they're not doing great. Her
in New
approval,
Zealand.
Yes.
Yeah. So their approval rating is sort of in the 30s. But I mean, Helen Haynes still won a third term from that position in New Zealand previously. I don't think there's a lot of enthusiasm necessarily for the Conservative leader, but I think it's one of those situations where like a centre-left leader who seems competent and is well loved on the international stage is not necessarily as popular as we would think back home. And yeah, potentially staring down the barrel of another hard election fight.
Like Justin Trudeau, everyone sort of loves him internationally, but internally there are question marks around some of his policies.
I think
oil pipelines, anyone?
Sorry, did someone say oil pipelines? It is. I think she is sort of an inspiring figure. Being one of the youngest female leaders in the world when she was initially elected.
Yeah,
and sort of having a baby whilst she was in charge in government, which I think is like a really positive sort of symbolic thing for women to see.
I'd forgotten that. Yeah, that's nuts.
It's sort of sad to see her go. I hope she goes and joins a big sort of like multilateral organization somewhere, like goes to the UN or the World Bank or something like that. Somewhere where she's still got sort of international exposure, because I'd hate to see her just kind of like, evaporate like Avengers Infinity War. I'd like to see her sort of continue, because I think she's got stuff to contribute, but that's my perspective as a not New Zealander. So I don't know all the ins and outs of the things that people may not like about her, but from what I've seen from her appearances on the Colbert Show, she seems like, pretty intelligent, well-rounded of a person, as well as like an adept political leader. So
yeah. Well, I just feel commiserations to the impressionist career of Melanie Bracewell, the comedian here, with her stunning Jacinda Ardern impression is top notch. And yeah, we're probably going to see that go unless, there's someone just this sketch really could use Jacinda Ardern just showing up randomly like they're Al Gore or something.
Oh, I said Helen Haynes before was the previous.
I raised an eyebrow. I was like, do they have the same name, this person George is talking about, in Helen Haynes?
It was Helen Clark. Sorry, I got my name.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's why I was a bit like, wait a minute. Helen Haynes, I thought, is an Australian political figure.
Yes.
Chris Hipkins, who's the guy,
the new New Zealand PM.
New guy. He actually got arrested back in the day. He's got a checkered past. No, not really. He was doing a student protest back in like the late 90s.
Oh, no, that doesn't count.
And they were like, you probably should stop.
You got me all juiced up. I thought he'd done something cool, like maybe killed a man in Reno just to watch him die.
No. The article from Sydney Morning Herald here is "Youthful and Ruthless: Chris Hipkins' Journey from Police Cell to Prime Minister."
Stop!
That sounds
my beating heart.
I know. I was like, wait.
That is an angle. The other angle that you could take is it's like Battlestar Galactica, when all the other people are gone and now the education minister becomes the president because there's no one else left.
He also came to international attention back in 2021 because he used to do a lot of the press conferences because he was one of the sort of guys, I guess, heading up some of the emergency responses. Mm-hmm. And he spoke of New Zealanders getting outside to spread their legs.
No,
which obviously he meant to say
spread their
legs.
Stretch their legs or spread their wings.
Oh, that's an uncomfortable slip of the tongue.
Well, I like him now.
But I guess the thing that they're saying...
You got to follow through on your promises.
The thing that they're saying is because he's so closely tied to the COVID restrictions that they previously had, maybe that won't, do well for him. But, I guess the thing being is, he's got to try and get... Same thing in Australia, same thing as everywhere else in the world. Inflation's got to try and get control of that and try and increase living standards and other things as well at the same time, which is really hard to do at the moment.
Especially when you consider New Zealand's a population of 5 or 6 million.
5 million.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of hard when you have a small island nation which is scattered amongst multiple islands to sort of have any massive growth in the economy. Like you're not going to see any sort of massive infusions of cash. So it's really down to sort of smart management as to how the country moves forward. But we'll see. We'll see how he goes. Maybe he's got a dark checkered past that'll come to light. Delicious.
Owing any SWAT stickers on his front lawn.
No, God, remember how crazy is Australia, man? That a candidate for political office mowed a SWAT sticker into his front lawn and then ran for office. Or his back. Oh, okay, his back lawn, because that's not fucking crazy. And we're not. He mowed a SWAT sticker into his back lawn, and we're not talking about it every episode of this podcast. Every day for years, we should be talking about that.
Thankfully,
just unbelievable Australian politics, honestly.
The Turnbull years, like that sort of era around 2016, 2017, where there was also like Malcolm Roberts as well. One Nation had become a thing again.
Malcolm Roberts, the living soul.
Living soul. There was some really crazy fucking, but like these less crazy now. But like that period, there were people like fighting outside, the blood on doors and stuff. James Ashby was getting into fights.
All of these have been connected to One Nation.
Just describing One Nation.
Pauline Hanson. Like Australian politics per se. It's this one party has had like swastika mowing man, the chief of staff punched out someone else, and then someone put blood on their door.
And then they got drunk and went to the source, to try and get some money from the NRA. Yeah. In America,
they were doing trying to get gun money.
Pauline Hanson wore a burqa to the floor of Parliament and then whipped it off triumphantly. Like, then there is a book that needs to be written about the history of One Nation over the last 10 years.
George, I think we've just created a business idea. That is amazing.
TM, that's ours. You can't have that. TM, trademark that.
Did I tell you I saw there's a shop here in the city that had little action figures of the Pauline Hanson in a burqa?
No, you didn't.
It's fantastic. It's this shop. I get a free shout out. It's called This Is Not a Toy Store, and it's on Little Collins Street. It just has like a whole bunch of like models or figurines and things, but they're all a bit weird. And there was one that was like Pauline Hanson in the burqa.
But do you want that? Who's that for?
It was like Barnaby Joyce, Pistol and Boo.
Hang on,
the terriers.
Barnaby Joyce like going out of Parliament and then back into Parliament. That was the whole thing.
Barnaby Joyce and his multiple families. Yeah, all that. But yeah, who is that Pauline Hanson action figure for? Because like anyone who's pro Pauline Hanson wouldn't buy that.
Might want it.
But anyone who's anti Pauline Hanson definitely doesn't want that in their house.
I think it's funny.
Staring at them while they make love.
Like I was tempted to get one. It's like in packaging and everything that makes it look like a action figure proper toy you'd find in a toy shop. Like, this is great. There was also the Zupa Trooper, which was a stormtrooper with like Zoop Duper branding all over it. Like, they had all this cool weird shit. But yeah, I rather enjoyed the Pauline in a burqa.
Iron Man figurine, pop vinyl,
Darth Vader.
Or Darth Vader.
Oh yeah,
Pauline in a burqa. Just
you either what is it? What's that quote? You either live long enough.
Either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
There you go.
Yeah.
I always know where to go for my Batman quotes. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and motherfucking TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me down to Qantas, where I'll be looking for some sweet deals on flights, given that they're probably going to be dropping prices soon.
It's weird. The prices are looking great all of a sudden. That's so strange. You did it, Adam. You did the thing where you took something that we talked about before, and then you made it a joke at the end. I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud. I'm like a proud mother hen. Thanks for listening, guys. We love your faces. We'll see you next week.
don't know if you guys can see this maybe through the thing, but this was the Pauline Burker action figure.
Oh, she's just in it. You can't actually. How do you?
Yeah, it's just a little person. Like, yeah, you don't open the packaging.
Is it Pauline underneath?
It was also the Imperial Wiggle. Was a good one, just like the Blue Wiggle, but as a stormtrooper, and Pistol and Boom from the War on Terrier collection.
Very good.
Was very, very funny. There was a whole bunch of other shit there as well, but they took my fancy.
What was the name of the shop again?
This is not a toy shop.
And I'm getting a cease and desist. Thanks for listening, guys. We love your faces. We'll see you next week.